Week 9 is in the books, and we found out a lot about these NFL teams this week. It was crazy, so let's get into it. All right, we're going to try something new this week, and hopefully moving forward, if you guys like it, it's called the 2-minute drill, and you guys are going to learn everything you need to know about these games and these teams in 2 minutes or less. Here we go. Let's start. Jets-Texans. I already said this earlier on in the season. If they lost to the Patriots, I'm not going to talk about them for the rest of the year. So unless they do something crazy or make a playoff run, I'm done. So we're not talking about that game. Let's move on. Browns, Chargers. It was 27-10. The Chargers take home the victory. Honestly, they keep on rolling against these bad teams. And Jameis Winston, I'm sorry, Browns fans, you should have saw it coming. He was going to have a bad game because he threw 3 touchdowns last week. Now he has 3 interceptions, and it's the same old Jameis we've seen since 2015. So there you go. Bengals, Raiders. Finally, the Bengals get a complete win. The Raiders have completely cleaned house this morning after a disgusting start to the first half of the year. So I'm not surprised the moves they're making. And yeah, it was 41-24. So a good win for the Bengals there. Broncos, Ravens started off as a good game. Bo Nix catching touchdown passes. Thought it was going to be more competitive, but then the Ravens did their thing after a bad loss. Went out there and completely dominated a team at home. They look scary when they're great, but honestly, I said this last week. With games like losing to the Browns last week, I just don't see it with them. They're kind of like the Bills. I'm not 100% scared of them because they'll have these games that look like one of the best teams in the NFL, and Lamar looks like MVP, but I'll believe it when I see it come playoff time. Cardinals, Bears, 29-9. The Cardinals win it, completely blow out Chicago, and Kyler Murray, I said this last week, when they keep rolling on offense and things are going well, they look like a very good team, and guess what? Now they have a winning record, and they're first place in the NFC West, and with the Bears, I'm not going to press the panic button on Caleb Williams. I've been saying this all season long. He will be fine, but the Bears, you need to fix your offensive line. So there you go. Now you're 4-4. That's tough, but you got to fix the O-line. And then finally, Commanders, Giants. It was a close game. I almost talked about this in my top 7, but you're going to miss the cut because, honestly, we all saw it coming. The Commanders still won the game, 27-22. The Giants had their moments. Congrats to Daniel Jones for throwing his first touchdown pass in over 630 days at MetLife Stadium. That's week 17 of the 2022 season, by the way. So congrats on getting multiple touchdowns in that stadium. But Jaden Daniels and the Commanders keep rolling on to 7-2. I can't believe I'm saying that. If you would have told me that 2 months ago, that would have been crazy. But there you go. That's our 2-minute drill for the games we're not going to get fully in depth about this week. But let's move on to our top 7 games of the week that really, really pulled you in, had so many great moments, great storylines, and ended up being close in the end. So let's start with number 7. Cowboys, Falcons. So this was on the border of making my list of wanting to talk about this because the game itself wasn't very close. The Falcons just really dominated on both sides of the ball. It ended 27-21, but it was just one of those typical Cowboys caught up with a bunch of garbage points at the end. And I got to give it to the Falcons. Now, I'm going to spend more time on the Cowboys in a second, but I got to give it to the Falcons. I mean, I keep thinking there's these trap games, not even trap games, but games where they're not going to look as good. And finally, Kirk Cousins is going to fold under pressure. And they had a couple of those games this year so far. But they're 6-3. They're first in their division. They look like they're easily on their way to a wild card spot, especially with the Bucs now starting to fall apart. And yeah, let's talk about the Cowboys now for a second, because this is the more interesting part. They're now 3-5. Dak Prescott just suffered a hamstring injury, which was just reported this morning. He's going to miss multiple weeks, if not like almost like 4 weeks possibly if it gets bad. And Micah Parsons is already missing this game. I know CeeDee Lamb was banged up. And yeah, it's time to have a conversation about the Dallas Cowboys in 2024 because it looks very similar to the 2020 year. Actually, it's crazy. There's a lot of comparisons to 2020 and 2024 in sports. The Chiefs won the Super Bowl. The Dodgers won the World Series. It's an election year. And now Dak Prescott is getting hurt and the Cowboys aren't going to be good. I've seen that comparison of all 4 items happening in the same 2 years. And yeah, this was the game where the Cowboys feel like, yeah, it's starting to get more and more helpless. And I don't blame Cowboys fans for just wanting everything to be torn down. Dak Prescott just got paid, but at this point, it's like, you're going to watch Cooper Rush come in. He came into this game in garbage time and looked about just as good as Dak Prescott, if not better. And we're going to see the next few weeks, the Cowboys probably be fine without Dak Prescott. And that just proves more and more again how you should not be paying these above average but not elite quarterbacks this much money. especially when you're not being carried by your defense at this point because you've had injuries on the defense and they don't look the same anymore. It's just, and it's almost good for the Cowboys, kind of like how we're going to talk about the Saints in a little bit. They almost need a collapse because they have pieces. They have CeeDee Lamb. They have Micah Parsons. They have a foundation to build their team around. But at some point, you can't keep middling and losing in the wild card round. You need a season like this. And sure, I know Dak is already paid, but at this point, you have a lot of questions to ask if you're the Cowboys organization. And going into Atlanta and just not being competitive for the most part is just another tack on that list of the 2024 season. So, it was an interesting game in storyline regards, not actually on the field. So, yeah, that's my number 7. Number 6, Vikings-Colts, the Sunday Night Football game just last night. And congrats to Vikings fans. I felt like you were teetering on the line, especially after the Colts got that, I'm going to go out and say bullshit defensive touchdown at the beginning of the game, where once again it felt like the Vikings completely got screwed by the refs. I mean, it was illegal contact to Sam Darnold's head, and they're just like, nope, look the other way. We don't care about the Vikings. And I was just like, damn, like the Vikings are kind of getting screwed out of the... Look, I'm a Chiefs fan. I hear about the refs every week. And I'm not the guy to blame the refs at all, but at some point it's like, dude, you just gave them a touchdown, the Colts. But props to the Vikings. Their defense has struggled a bit recently, and then in this game, they shut them down to only, 6 offensive points for the Colts. And yes, there were shaky parts on offense. Sam Darnold had 3 interceptions. I feel like he's starting to revert back to his old ways just a little bit, but I think the coaching is good enough. And they have enough weapons, and they're still talented enough on defense, of course, where, look, they're 6-2. They're still in it for sure. And if they can just get past these worst defenses and put up just enough points, I think they'll be fine. Now, I've said this for a few weeks now. It's the Vikings. They have a curse behind them. Everybody knows this. I don't trust them in the playoffs at all. But this was good for their confidence to get out and get a win against the Colts. Quickly with the Colts, though, Joe Flacco, a very subpar, even below average game for him. People are like, let's just go back to Anthony Richardson. At this point, we're 4-5, and we need to develop the guy. I don't know anymore. I said this last week. I thought the Colts were kind of wasting their season putting in Richardson. And I think Joe Flacco is still the right decision. He will have his bad moments. I mean, he's an older quarterback, and, against a good defense like that's going to happen. But I think the ceiling is still there with Joe Flacco. They were talking about Chris Collinsworth and the booth were talking about it. Anthony Richardson is happy to be able to learn on the bench right now and kind of just mature as a person and, just learn a lot of things about the playbook and become a good teammate. So I think that's a good sign if you're a fan of Anthony Richardson. But it kind of feels like the Colts are spiraling out of control, and I'm just not sure where they're headed right now. And that was just another game where it's like, sure, I get the idea of putting it on prime time, but it just ended up kind of being boring. I didn't think I was going to be putting this game in my in-depth analysis, but it's Panthers Saints. I felt like I kind of have to talk about it for 2 reasons. One, it was a close game, 23-22, and the Panthers get their second win of the season at the midway point, which at this point I was not expecting at all. I thought it was definitely a possibility they lose the rest of their games. So congrats to the Panthers. Congrats to Bryce Young, who this rarely is an occurrence at this point. I saw him smile yesterday. So good for him. I'm going to go see Chiefs Panthers in a few weeks. That's cool. The Panthers have multiple wins when I see them. So that's cool. Anyways, the Saints this morning, finally, praise the football gods. Dennis Allen has been fired from the Saints. It was about 2 years too late. 2 years ago, I was talking about how it was a horrible decision that they kept Andy Dalton in at quarterback for the whole second half of the year, and they were just middling into this shitty team that nobody wanted to watch. And then last year, they somehow were 9-8, but guess what? It was all a waste because Dennis Allen, his play calling and his coaching was awful. And now this year, yeah, they started 2-0. But we all knew it was going to collapse at one point, and I said he should have been fired regardless of how they started. He's the worst coach in the NFL. He doesn't even talk highly about his own teammates sometimes, which is really weird to see out of a supposed leader. So look, Saints fans, I kind of just said this about the Cowboys. You shouldn't be too sad. This is needed for the franchise. You guys are by far in the most cap debt out of any team in the NFL. This has been going on for years. You've been screwing yourselves as an organization, and this is the first step. Fire the coach. Just go out and lose most of your games for the rest of the year. What are you, 2-7 now? That's awful. and you guys need to kind of just prep to sell the team. The trade deadline's coming up tomorrow on Tuesday. It would have already happened by the time this video comes out. And hopefully you start selling these expensive pieces. And this is the first step to become a team who can finally accept that they need to rebuild. That's all it is with the Saints. I know it's a hard pill to swallow, especially for the higher-ups in the organization. But what do you want to be, 8-9 every season and just be irrelevant? No. So this is where you need to start. And hopefully you can go ahead and get yourselves a quarterback in the draft and work your way up from there. So honestly, yes, it's embarrassing to lose to the Panthers, especially starting off 2-0 like the way you did. But at this point, firing Dennis Allen is the best thing your franchise could have done in 2024. So there you go. All right, and then number 4, I put down Jags-Eagles. Now, this could actually have the most amount of storylines coming out of it in terms of the fact that the Eagles, I mean, we all know, if you watched yesterday, they were dominating. They were up 22-0 at one point. The final score, 28-23 Eagles. And they had to get a game-winning interception near the red zone to win this game against Trevor Lawrence, who was just awful in this game in general. Had no touch, 2 rushing touchdowns. Okay, excuse me, but 2 interceptions. It was the same old Trevor Lawrence where it felt like when times got tough, he was just airing it out, completely inaccurate to these guys. Now, mind you, they only had Brian Thomas really healthy and Evan Ingram, I guess. So the Eagles, good. They're 6-2, fine. They won 4 games in a row or whatever it is. But this is what I said. I still don't fully trust them in that they could almost blow a game at home to the Jaguars of all teams. And the talent is completely there. I mean, we saw the play of the almost of the year with the Saquon reverse hurdle, which was just awesome to watch. I don't even care if you're a Giants fan. I'm sure you were tortured by it, but that was just a sick highlight in general. Going back to the worst part of the Eagles, obviously, is the coaching. I don't care that they're 6-2. I've said this week after week with Nick Sirianni. The dude's a sociopath. He never makes the right decisions. I don't know why he kept going for 2 for no exact reason. The tush push wasn't even working after the 3rd time they tried it. I'm getting mad about a team that I really shouldn't care about, but it's just frustrating to see this talented of a roster run by that guy who almost lost you that game, which makes me not confident at all come playoff time. I don't care what players you have at this point. Yes, Saquon Barkley's lighting it up. Yes, Jalen Hurts has looked a lot better. But when you have Nick Sirianni, it just feels troubling. Like, there's no way they're going to beat the Lions if they have to play them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so much potential. And then a game like this where they could have easily, blown out their opponent. They were just going for it on 4th downs they shouldn't have and not taking points. And, it's just, I know Eagles fans are already frustrated with this, but yeah, that was just bad. All right. Number 3, another game I didn't expect at all to put on here. Now, obviously, the indications of this game didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things in the year of 2024, but it's Pats Titans. I figure I'd just give it a shout because nobody expected this game to even be on red zone at all, and it really wasn't for the first half. But look, it went into overtime, and the biggest play of the game was Drake May buying enough time to basically throw his own little Hail Mary from, 15 yards out. And it landed in Ramondre Stevenson's hands, and that was easily the best play of his career so far, and it was awesome. It was great to see. Also, I know this is like a trope that people say, but genuinely, sneaky athletic, Drake May. He likes to take off at the right time, and he's got wheels. So don't underestimate Drake May. I feel like this draft class, man, is really just shown out so far, especially compared to the 2023 draft class. But yeah, the Patriots, I think they got something on their hands. Now, obviously, they don't have the talent to win a lot of games this year. But if you could just keep the coach around and, have Drake May get used to the system and then finally put some talent around him next year, I think bright things are ahead for Patriots fans, which I know nobody wants to hear it because they're like, everybody my age especially is like, Patriots, they don't deserve happiness for the next 30 years. And I get it. That's going to be the same thing that happens with Chiefs when Mahomes retires. But look, it's cool to see that a team knows when they're bad, they can take a few years off, and then finally another quarterback comes in and they can start to build around them. So maybe that play sparks something in Patriots fans' heads where they're like, wow, this guy could actually make these plays. Cool. Even if it was against the Titans, it was still a nice play. Yes, they did end up losing in overtime, but hey, it might be better off because now they're going to have a better draft pick against the Titans, who were the worst team in the NFL along with the Panthers. So look, that's definitely, there was definitely a few positives coming out of this Patriots-Titans game. Yeah, that's really all I wanted to say, though. I just felt like I had to mention. I'm probably not going to talk about the Patriots too much more often this season, So have at it, Patriots fans. It was a cool moment, even though you lost. All right, our last 2 games, Bills Dolphins. I put it number 2 specifically because of the division ramifications, where since the Dolphins lost, it's pretty much the Bills division at this point. I know the Jets are 3-6, but who cares? They're not going to win it. So the Bills are 7-2. They have won, oh gosh, what is it now? They have won, I think, 4 or 5 straight at this point. Their last loss was against the Ravens in week 4. Yeah, I think they've won 5 straight. They're 7-2. Josh Allen has 2 turnovers on the year. That's it. I mean, he has like 2 turnovers a game in his regular seasons. And the fact, man, with the Dolphins, just the fact that with Tua coming back, they've lost both of their games in a high-scoring affair with a game-losing field goal at the end. Tyler Bass hitting a 61-yarder, a career-long in Buffalo in front of that crowd that has given him hard times but has supported him throughout his misses that he's been shaky this season and last season. And to do that for the city of Buffalo, to pretty much, I mean, at this point, I want to just say they solidified their division, barring any disaster or injury. I mean, I feel like I know it's only week 9, but it feels right to say that at this point. The Bills are just obviously the best team. But it sucks. The Dolphins, they just can't figure out a way to close out these games. And, Tua looked fine once again. I really can't put the blame on the offense, although Tyreek Hill, man. You want to talk about Tyreek Hill. He's got 1 touchdown on the season, 1 100-yard game. He just really doesn't look like himself right now. Maybe they got to keep getting used to it, but at this point, it's too late. The season feels like it's completely lost. It's going to be an interesting conversation. Be on the lookout later on to see if Mike McDaniel is in that conversation for getting fired. Now, I personally don't think he should be. They kind of just got screwed by the Tua injury. Their losses have been close. We'll see how the rest of the season goes. But yeah, another fun shootout game that the Bills proved that, look, they can go out and win it with Josh Allen limiting his turnovers. So just kind of like the Ravens, when they look really good, they're very scary, but we'll see come playoff time. I mean, as a Chiefs fan, we all know what happens come playoff time, so they really got to prove it. But better season than expected for the Bills, so there you go. Okay, before we get to our best game of the week, a quick honorable mention. Didn't make our list, but I got to mention Packers-Lions just because it was hyped to be the game of the week. Obviously, the Lions just completely handled the Packers, 124-14. I just feel like there's not a lot to say about this game other than, yep, the Lions are still legit. Their defense looks great. Their running game is insane. Jared Goff keeps having a really high completion percentage with limited turnovers, so good for him. And the Packers, I mean, Jordan Love keeps doing his thing, keeps turning over the ball, and then keeps having big plays occasionally. And, we'll talk about these two teams. That's why I don't feel like I have to mention them that much more often. We're gonna be talking about them the whole season. They're gonna make the playoffs. So there's our honorable mention. As we get to what I think was the best game of the week, it definitely helps that Red Zone had to cut off, and I had to go watch the end of this game. So I feel like I was really in depth at the end, fourth quarter and overtime. It's Rams Seahawks, which I wasn't really thinking that much about this game going into the week. But you look at it, huge division ramifications. The Seahawks are just on a collapse right now. I said this earlier last week, I think. Their defense is really taking a hit. It just feels like they can't stop anybody when it really matters. Geno Smith had 3 turnovers in this game. And it just felt like every time the Seahawks were about to close out this game, they were shooting themselves in the foot. And, you could stop the Rams multiple times, and that's great and all. But at some point, it's Sean McVay, it's Matt Stafford, and it's Cooper Kupp and Kyren Williams. And this is without Puka. Puka got ejected, which, by the way, was complete bullshit. I don't agree with that ejection at all. But at some point, if you're not going to capitalize on other teams' mistakes and close out the game, yeah, the Rams are still that team. They're still going to be a playoff team, and they're that talented to go ahead and close out a game. An absolute dime thrown to Demarcus Robinson, who I want the Chiefs to pick up in the trade deadline. I don't think it's going to happen at this point. They like Demarcus Robinson, but yep, the Rams, I said this. We had our power rankings video last week. They're in like my top 14, 13 teams. I think they could easily move up. They're 4-4. They're ahead of the 49ers. They're ahead of the Seahawks. So definitely look out for the Rams and the Seahawks, man. I mean, Mike McDonald going for that 4th down in overtime when you could have just taken the points. I don't agree with it at all. I know you're like a new young head coach and they like doing that with the analytics or whatever, but at this point, you made so many mistakes. You're lucky enough that Geno Smith laid out an absolute dime to Jackson Smith-Njigba, who, by the way, had his career best game, to get into overtime. And then you waste that possession after winning the toss and not take the points, I don't feel bad for you guys anymore. So a disaster for the Seahawks. I feel like at this point they're not going to make the playoffs, and you're going to have a conversation about Geno Smith at the end of the year. For the Rams, congrats. You're back, you're healthy, and you're definitely going to make a playoff push. And that was my favorite game of the week. It was a thriller, a shootout, and an overtime game. So yeah, definitely number one. And there you go. Be on the lookout for another video. We're going to make our prediction episode separate. So be on the lookout. We're going to post that probably about a day after this episode comes out. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed our new faster pace segments of covering these games, especially in week 9, which was a fun week. We're at the mid-season point. And yeah, we got a whole other half of football to talk about going forward these next few months. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, comment down below, interact with us. Follow us at First and Gold on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. And yeah, I'm Sam Gold. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next video. Goodbye.